Hello，你好，欢迎回来。Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger. The date is November 18, 2020. We have been talking a lot about the Chinese traditional folklores and religious figures and all the funny bloopers and WTF moments in Chinese Taoism, Buddhism religion. And today, I'm going to digress a little bit from that and talk about the part of Chinese mythology that is, frankly, my personal favorite. The really, really fun part about Chinese mythology. You see, I am one of those perhaps weird guys that I like scary movies, scary stories. I love a lot of ghosts, demons, and uh, evil beings out to uh, destroy the world and getting conquered by heroes. And I like fantasy stuff. I like that kind of stuff. Perhaps that is one reason why I really, really can get into the Chinese mythology, even though I'm not, at least I'm no longer a religious person. But I just find so much in Chinese mythology that it's enjoyable for someone like me that really stimulates the imagination. A lot of those stories are really, really wonderful. The part of the mythology we are going to look at today is with regarding to how demons and demigods come about, how demons and demigods are created in Chinese mythology. Now, in Christian or Catholic beliefs, generally things are very straightforward. You're a good person, you die, you go to heaven, you become an angel. Uh, and if you're an evil person, you die, you go to hell. And if you're really, really evil, you might become a demon. And that is basically it. I mean, there were some archangels and arch demons that were created in the very beginning, before the heaven and hell came into beings, and demons like Belials and etc. etc. We won't go into that because that's not what we're here to talk about today. But generally speaking, things are straightforward. How demons and angels come about in the what I would say more Western beliefs. In Chinese mythology, it's a lot more complex, and, well, personally speaking, I find it a little bit more interesting. First, we must establish that in Chinese belief, in Chinese mythology, the way Chinese people still think to this day is that anything, and they do mean anything, has the capacity to become immortal, to become sentient. What does that mean? That means that if you are a person and you follow the Buddha's way and you do all the right things, you study all the right stuff, you go and meditate on all the right topics, you may you can become immortal. You can eventually gain uh, godhood if you are a good person. Um, but not just human. Chinese people believe that any object, any animal have the same capacity. Now, they don't get it as easily as human beings because one of the major hurdle that any immortal have to overcome is they have to get to the point where they can turn into, they can take human form, they can take human shape, they can speak, in another word, they can speak human tongue, they can take human shape. That is the first of a list of long line of things they have to accomplish before they can gain a godhood or demonhood. We'll get there eventually. Now, just to keep things relatively simple, we'll just look at animals and objects. We won't go into all the nitty-gritty details because that's just going to get way too complicated and I'm going to lose my train of thought. But, okay, Chinese people believe that the first thing that anything, any animal, any object, any person need to achieve before being on the road to godhood is longevity. Chinese people have a say 勿老成精. You don't have to memorize how to say this. Basically, wu means things, items, objects. Lao means old, age. Chen Chen becomes. Jing Jing means sanction, immortal. 物老成精 means anything that lasted long enough can become immortal. Now, Chinese mythology is full of stories like that. That a 1,000-year-old turtle can speak and turn into human shape, or a family heirloom that have been passed down for centuries, for generations, can suddenly turn into a member of the family, or take on the image of one of the ancestors and come and pass wisdom down to its descendants. Uh, the most common is animals, because animals they're alive to begin with. So it is said that animals can start on the road to become immortal if they can live for 100 years. So by 100 years, an animal will start on the road and on the first on the journey, very long journey to become immortal. Now for objects, it takes really, really long. Typically, for any kind of inanimate object to become immortal, to gain a sentient mind, it can take up to 500 or 1,000 years. And on top of that, this object has to have intimate contact with organic matters, preferably human. So, let's say a hairbrush that's been passed down for generations and has been used for generations. A sword, a family sword that has been passed down for generations and has actually been used in battle, has touched blood. Uh, a family teacup that has been passed down for generations and uh, has been touched by people's lips and tongues. Things like that will have a much higher chance of gaining sanction than, let's say, an abandoned car that's just sitting there on the side of the road for 500 years. Now, that abandoned car can still become sentient if it has contact with other organic matters. Like, well, if, say, the car has been abandoned and there's a, a family of rats taking up residence in the car, and the car has become the residence of generations and generations of rats, and that car can still become sentient and become immortal. It just takes a lot longer and a lot harder work. So that is just the first step for animals or inanimate objects to become sentient, to become immortal. Now, once they gain that little spark of life. Let's say that they gain once they gain that little spark of immortality in them, they have to then try to get to the next step, which is to be able to change their shape, change their base nature to something else, eventually to human shape, to form human word, to walk like people, to talk like people, like King Louis in Jungle Book. I'm gonna talk like you and walk like you and ooh 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 and all that stuff. Yeah, no, King Louis is a good example of what it would be like for a monkey on the way to gaining immortality. That monkey, its goal is to be able to transform into human. Now, how do they get to that point from point A, which is gaining that spark of intellect, to point B, to be able to shift into human? There's two ways for them to accomplish that. There's two ways for these, uh, shall we say, baby immortals to accomplish that. One is they have to be patient. They have to try to soak up the ray of the sun and the beam from the stars and the light of the moon. And they have to soak up the raindrops from the heaven. They have to soak up the touch of the wind. They basically have to be exposed to nature a lot. And they have to do good things. Now you may think, okay, so at this point they are just baby immortals. How can they do good things? How would that even work? Like, let's say you are that abandoned car, and after 1,000 years on the side of the road, you suddenly wake up, and you find that you are now a little bit kind of intelligent. And how would an abandoned car go about doing good things? Well, a lot of this take coincidence. Let's say, let's say this abandoned car that's been on the side of the road for 1,000 years has gained sanction, uh, and now is trying to accumulate enough karma, accumulate enough power to get to the next stage, which is to transform into human. Obviously, a car can just start wandering all over the place and trying to do good deed, help old ladies across the street. However, let's say if it's raining and storming outside, and someone is trapped outdoors. Let's say there's a little orphan boy or orphan girl that is out in the cold, in the rain. And this little orphan boy or orphan girl, we'll just say little orphan, this little orphan finds the abandoned car and is able to get out of the element and stay alive, seek shelter inside this abandoned car. That automatically counts as a good deed, and that will advance this abandoned car's karma or power one step closer to gaining that ability to change shape into human. Um, let's say let's say there's a dog that somehow manages to live for 100 years and gain that first spark of immortality. And if this dog then go on and do good things, like guard people's houses or chase away predators from people from the farm, or find lost item, every time the dog does something like that, the karma, the power, goes up and up and up, and eventually, one day, it might take thousands of years, but one day, this dog suddenly can take human shape and can talk human language. And once an object an animal get to that point, get to a point where they can take human shape, then they are at a crossroad. But we'll come back to this one in a little bit because I just explained to you the first way to get to this crossroad. There's the second way. The first way to do good deed and to soak up nature's energy take long time. You know, not every day something's going to drop in your lap for you to do good deed on. So it take a long time, take a lot of coincidence, take a lot of opportunities. So unfortunately, a lot of immortals end up picking the second way. Second way is much faster. And the second way is an immortal, these baby immortals can quickly bring up their power level, quickly bring up their, bring them closer to becoming uh, able to take human shape by soaking in, taking in the essence of other human. So in other words, they have to eat people. They have to drink people's blood. They have to soak in people's misery. Um, Apparently, to these baby immortals, human essence is uh, it's like Gatorade. It's like Red Bull. It's like a natural power up. So now we go back to this question. How would these baby immortals go about accomplishing this? Well, if we say use a dog example, then that's easy, right? Once this dog get to 100 years old and gain this spark of intellect, this new immortality, then this dog go out and attack people and eat people and eat other animals as well, and try to commit as much murder, as much slaughter as he can. And every time he kill or eat a person, he power level go up. How about the abandoned car? How would that work? Well, we can use the uh, same example. Let's say this abandoned car that have been sitting on the side of the road for 500 years have gained the spark of intelligence, this immortality. Well, a abandoned car can't just wander around murdering people. But let's say there's a storm outside, and that little orphan we used in the previous example come into the car to seek shelter from the storm. And then that little orphan cut himself on a piece of rusty metal in the car, get infected, and die. That gives the car a major boost of power. That death will help the car gain more power. And keep in mind, from point A to point B is not just like a straight jump. It's not like you're that car just sitting on the side of the road, and then one day suddenly you can transform into human. As you power up, as these new immortals gain more power, they can start to do more and more. So before this car can turn into human, this car can gain other abilities, other things it can do, like actually move about on its own. Or, well, it probably start by open and shut its own doors and stuff like that. But you get my drift. It's not a straight, like one day you're nothing and next day you can turn into a human. They actually do gain more and more abilities, which is kind of scary when you think about it. Because as these new immortals, especially if they pick the second way, they pick the way of murder and mayhem and soaking in people's blood to get to godhood. Every time they kill someone, every time they murder someone, they gain more power, they gain new abilities, they can do more and more. Now, it is not without consequences, of course. Otherwise, every immortal would pick that second way. If you were to pick the second way, which is the way of evil, if you try to do the shortcut by murdering people, the Jade Emperor have a system in place. We talked about the Jade Emperor in the previous episode. The Jade Emperor is basically the king, the lord in heaven. He will randomly send down lightning bolts to try to erase you from existence. So if you pick this shortcut, you have to it's like you have to constantly hide from the law if you choose to be a criminal. If you pick this shortcut, you have to constantly watch out for lightning from the sky that will get rid of you. Assuming that no matter method one or method two, now that the, these immortals get to the crossroad, they can now turn into human shape. Now, depending on how they get to this point, they become either a demigod or they become a demon. A demigod in Chinese language, in Mandarin, it's called Xian, 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 and the demon is called Yao, Yow, Yao. So if you decide to take the slow route, but you don't kill anybody, you just soak in nature and you do a lot of good deeds to get to this point. Once you can achieve human shape, you can go on and become a Xian, a demigod, one of the good guys. Or if you choose the second method, you committed a lot of murder to get to this point. Then you become a Yao, a demon. And after that, after you become a demon, after you become a demigod, you kind of become arch enemy. So the way for a demigod to go on and hopefully one day become a real god is to go around the world and get rid of uh, the the demons. And the best way for a demon to one day become uh, a devil, well, it's not really a devil, but like an archdemon, which is called a mo, mo, is to slay as many demigods as they can. Now this sounds this sounds a lot like the kind of setup that you see in the modern video game, but this is Chinese mythology that's been going around for 6,000 years, and they came up with this very intricate system of how how a mundane object can become immortal, and an immortal become a human shape, and this thing then become a Xian or a Mo, a demigod or a demon. These things have to fight each other until one day they accumulate enough glory. They become a god or an archdemon. That is like some fascinating and interesting stuff. And like I said, Chinese mythology just full of stories, some scary, some touching, some very nice, some very sad, about uh, a lot of these deities, these demigods, these demons that have made the journey, made the attempt to reach godhood. Some of them failed, some of them succeeded. um, Eventually, I want to uh, tell more of these stories on the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast and on the Wisdom Wednesday. But I think this is complicated enough for now, and it's been a long episode. So we'll be back next week. Next week, I want to talk to you guys about the five most common animals that can become demigods and are worshipped in many Chinese families, even today. That is, if I remember this by next Wednesday. For now, thank you for checking out today's Wisdom Wednesday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. Have a good night, 晚安 and 再见.